Ladies, gentlemen, creatures of the night, welcome back to the Rabbit Hole Podcast, where we do mediocre research and give our unwanted opinion on a topic that you don't care about. Yet again, joined by my three co-hosts, and Tyler will let you start off with this week.
Well, first and foremost, I just think that it's awesome. This is episode 10. Like, I know I've not been here for most of it, but episode 10 to me is quite an achievement. So I think we can kind of pat ourselves on the back for that. But anyway, this week, people, we are going to discuss zombies and lots of things that surround zombie culture, which in the last 10 years or so, zombies have really kind of hit the scene. Like they've been around, really since the 60s, in terms of what we know in film. But I mean, zombies have always I mean, there's and we'll kind of dig into it in a little while, but I mean, as the term zombie has lots of different meanings. But last week we discussed vampires, and when we were discussing vampires, we discussed a certain film called I Am Legend. And I actually didn't realize until I was reading about I Am Legend that it was actually inspiration for George A. Romero's movie Night of the Living Dead. So, to me, that's kind of Night of the Living Dead is the fundamental zombie film
Yeah, I agree.
that kind of sparked what we know as the modern day zombie. And the movie it still holds up today. I've seen it a couple times throughout the years, and I am out of the group probably the most hardcore zombie fanatic that we have. Like I am when it comes to The Walking Dead. I have been a avid fan since the beginning. Read the comic each month. I have tons of collectibles, and it's just kind of been my thing throughout the last 10 years. I know it's kind of fizzling out now, but um, which we won't get into that. But it's just I've always been fascinated by, um, you know, and also terrified by the idea of a zombie. You know, us being our own worst enemy, which in reality, human beings are we're our own worst enemy anyway. But I mean, it just whenever you think of something that can't be killed because it's already dead, and it's an unstoppable force, really. Because I mean, in a lot of the depictions of a zombie of the zombie apocalypse, zombies spread their virus, or in some cases it's not even a virus. It's just, you die and you resurrect, whether it be because of genetic makeup, whatever they decided to explain it in the certain lore. But it's horrifying to me to think about, being trapped in a home surrounded by a horde of zombies and no way out. Because I mean, in some depictions, a zombie can be killed by beheading or shooting. The brain has got to be killed, but there's also depictions to where a zombie can't be killed again. There was another '80s film called Return of the Living Dead,
Hmm.
and I've seen it. I've not seen any of the spin-offs or the sequels because they're stupid. Which Return of the Living Dead's stupid too. But I mean, it's very much, they're dead, and they're not dying again. Like, in fact, the way that they wipe them out is they drop a nuke on the town that they're in, and I think that kind of stops the spread of the whatever it is that I can't remember. It's been such a long time, but anyway, it's just, to me, it's fascinating, and it's also the scariest thing that could possibly happen to the human race in terms of an apocalyptic situation, in my opinion. Yeah, we could have nuclear war. But when it comes down to it, nuclear war is going to wipe out the majority of the human race. A zombie apocalypse is going to wipe out the majority of the human race, but not only do the survivors have to live in a world where the world ain't working, you also have to defend yourself against your neighbor, who is now a monster trying to eat your face off. And it's you know, I don't think that we will ever see a real life zombie. And what I mean by zombie is somebody that has died and has risen back from the dead. I don't think that we'll ever see anything like that. But I do think that there are scenarios that could cause a zombie-like situation, and we've already seen that in the world that we live in today. You know, and we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more here in a minute. But back to kind of what I was talking about. I Am Legend, which we all know as a film that, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people knew that it was actually a book. I'm sure people do, but it back in 2000 and whatever year that was, I don't even remember what year the movie came out. 2007, Will Smith made the movie I Am Legend, which at the time, post-apocalyptic setting, you know, kind of mysterious on what happens, you know, and then you find out that there was a virus that outbroke and basically turned people into vampires, for lack of a better term. I mean, they're to me kind of a mixture of a vampire and a zombie, because I mean they have traits of both. But the book is almost pretty close to the film. I mean, there's some differences, but it's just basically kind of that first post-apocalyptic world where there's very few surviving humans, and most of the human race has been turned into something that is not human anymore. So, which to me is you know, without it, we wouldn't have what we have today. And in terms of the what people view as the zombie apocalypse. And you know, I remember growing up, you know, Walking Dead came out, first season came out in like 2010, I believe, and that was towards the end of my high school life. And a lot of us, you know, before that we had, you know, like Dead Rising, the game, and we had movies. We had Dawn of the Dead, the remake from '04,
which that's probably one of my favorite zombie movies.
It is a fantastic film, you know, and I don't think it gets as much credit as it should, because I mean the fundamental of the film is very much similar to Romero's movie from the '70s. Yes. You know, but fast zombies. Mm-hmm. And you know, that to me, like the fast zombie has its place in zombie culture. You know, they have their own kind of, I don't know.
So hold on, I want to kind of cut you off here for a second and just kind of explain what you mean by the fast zombie thing. Just for people who kind of don't really watch a whole lot of zombie movies or get into the zombie culture very much. So what he means by fast zombie is throughout the genre of zombie films, video games, stuff like that, there's the Walking Dead type zombie, which is the slow moving, kind of wander around in like hordes. Can only be killed by being shot in the head or something like that.
Beheading, yeah, that kind of stuff.
They're deteriorating, actually rotting, and
they are actually dead people. Yes.
I mean, their bodies are actually decomposing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So they're more of like a like CJ said, they're more of like a dead person that's come back to life. They're like decomposing. Now, a fast zombie, like you see in the movie World War Z with Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I think of when I think of fast zombie. But that's not really zombie. That's more of like infected.
Yeah.
Like zombie,
a rage
I pretty much just think of. Yeah. With zombie, I pretty much just think of the slow moving, have to get shot in the head type.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's
the fast zombie, I kind of call it more of like an infected, where it can be killed just like any normal person, getting shot in the chest or, you know, something like that. But
Anything can put them down.
they move
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah, and you know, and when you think I Am Legend, and I mentioned in the last episode, World War Z, they're very similar to me in terms of the way that they react and the way that they don't necessarily rip you to shreds and eat you. They bite you to infect you so that they add to their masses, and in Walking Dead and Romero's films, when you think of a zombie, they're gonna more than likely devour you completely. I mean, if they don't devour you, you do rise and you do come back from the dead. But I mean, it's never really explained why you come back from the dead. I mean, there's theories out there that the government released some sort of contagion that spread to the human mind, that once the body dies, it sparks something that brings you back. And even in the Walking Dead lore, we know that everybody is infected. We don't know what they're infected with, but everybody is infected. So that means when you die, you rise from the dead. And the Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, has always said that he never wanted there to be a cure. It was basically about rebuilding society in a post-apocalyptic world that has been overtaken by the masses of zombies or of undead or walkers, whatever you want to call them in that world. And that's how Romero's worlds somewhat are. The thing that I find cool about Romero's world, though, is some of the zombies, they keep traits of who they were before they died. So, and they kind of depicted this in season 1 of The Walking Dead a little bit, but they veered away from that because it's not source material accurate. But what really what the fascination part of it is that they are dead, but they are still trying to go about some of their daily lives. Like I remember in, I believe, Land of the Dead, one of them was he was a gas station worker, and he was going to the gas pump, and he was picking and pretending like he was running through basically his job like he would daily. In Day of the Dead, you had, I think his name, the zombie's name was Buddy. And Buddy was a zombie that they were trying really hard to get to be able to communicate and talk and function like a human again. And Romero was going down that path of, I think, somehow trying to find a way to redeem the undead.
And you see that too. There's a lot of even movies that are focused around that. What's that? The TV show I Dead or whatever, about the girl who's a zombie.
Oh yeah.
Or
I've never actually watched that show, but
so so whenever you were talking about the zombies trying to go about their daily life, I instantly thought of the movie Warm Bodies.
Yep, and that's
Warm Bodies.
Very much the same kind of, those are in. I've only seen the movie once, but if I remember correctly, I mean they eat you and they turn just like a normal zombie would, but then they start towards the end, and I can't remember exactly, but somehow emotion turned them back. I can't remember exactly what it was.
So
But,
I think off the top of my head, I think it is like he fell in love, and after getting shown love or something like that, it started his heart back up.
Yeah, and brought him back to life, basically, and in that setting that would work, but in a setting like The Walking Dead, when you have decaying corpses, to where now at the point that they're in the show, and even at the point when the comic ended, most of the zombies were, I mean, they were down to skeletal. I mean, almost like there was no flesh or any left. They were just almost walking skeletons. But there's, like I said, a lot of people have tried to give a spin to the zombie genre because it did take off, and there's some that I find really cool, and there's some I kind of find stupid. And I never watched Z Nation much, but I know that in Z Nation they made the main character. He was infected, and he was technically a zombie, but he still had all of his motor functions.
Yeah, I've actually Z Nation's one of my favorite Netflix binges.
A lot of people really liked it, and I mean, it had a following, and I just never, I seen a little bit of it, and it had too much of that B movie feel to me, which is fine because I love B movies. There's nothing wrong. To me, the Living Dead series, they're B movie films, and The Walking Dead itself has that B movie feel at some points, but I just find it fascinating, and I just remember when we were all younger, the zombie apocalypse was like, everybody wanted it to happen, and I'm like, and I was one of them because, we get to run around and shoot zombies in the face all day. But when you get down to it, if that was your mom or your dad that's trying to eat your face off, it's a very sick, horrifying situation, and I, for one, would never want it to happen. So, I mean, there we go.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I daydream about it daily.
About the zombie apocalypse.
Just
daily.
Just
There's
the
actually a
apocalypse
book,
in general.
I want to stab my mom in the face so
Yeah.
bad I daydream about it daily.
No, not stabbing my mother, but like. So here's the
I know
thing,
what
right?
you're saying.
I really wish I had the editing skills to clip that, Tyler, and just isolate that audio.
All right, Norman Bates, calm down over there.
That's I guess if something ever like that happened, you'd go somewhere else, so you didn't have to deal with anybody you know.
Zombie road trip? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you would be
So-
traveling, right? Kind of like Zombieland. Well, no, the exact opposite. Trying to get home, you're trying to go away from home.
Yeah.
So
But,
there's a
like-
book called The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. I don't know if
I've
y'all
heard
ever
that.
read it or not,
I've
but
not read it, but I've heard about it.
I
They made
have
a movie,
read it,
didn't they?
and it is a very good book.
I'm pretty
I
sure
mean,
they made a
if you
movie
guys are
about that.
looking for
Let me-
something like that, it takes like, that's the thing, is it's the zombie survival guide and stuff like that, but it
Uh-huh.
actually takes itself like really, really seriously and gives some really good insight into like location planning and food sourcing and shelter and all that stuff, and gives like actually good, not just like zombie survival type stuff, but like just general survival skills.
Well, and it needs to, because like like I said earlier, I don't think that we're ever going to come face to face with an undead person trying to rip my chest open. But what I do think is possible is that, and we can refer to cinema because that's all we really have to refer to when it comes to this, but 28 Days Later, that is a movie that, was it 28 Days is the first one, right?
It's 28
Yeah,
days and 28
Yeah,
weeks.
the 28 weeks, yeah.
And then supposedly there is actually 28 years in production right now. Or 28
Well, I
months.
mean, hey, I've not really sat down and watched the second film. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but all I know is that I remember
I like it better
Jeremy
than the first
Renner
one.
burned alive with a flamethrower.
Yeah.
But anyway, in that movie, it's depicted as somewhat of a rage virus, where the person is not necessarily dead, but they are. I mean, their brain has basically been taken over by a virus that has pumped them full of adrenaline. They're fast. They attack. They don't care what they do. That their goal is to destroy. And to me, that would be more plausible of a scenario than undead. Because who's to say that the government, not even the government, anybody could be in a lab somewhere creating some sort of a virus that, if it's turned wrong, could infect human beings and cause us to go insane, basically. There is and it's a very messed up comic book series called Crossed. And I don't recommend it. I've read it, and it is, it's very, very, very morbid. And when I say very morbid, it's like one of the worst things I've ever read in terms of just, yeah, it's disgusting. But it's by Garth Ennis, and in fact, is he? Yeah, he's in charge of The Boys as well. So I mean, if The Boys kind of tells you how dark that is, it's even like 20 times more dark than The Boys. But in it, the people basically they get infected with a disease that puts a cross across their face, like it basically burns it into their skin, but it makes them go insane and crazy. And they do they rape, they murder, I mean, it's disgusting what they do. But I mean, it's not necessarily zombies, but it's an other version of human beings losing their mind and a disease taking over humans and turning them into something other than a human, because not a typical human isn't going to do what they do and here to people.
You said it burns crosses into people's face and makes them insane and rape and murder and stuff like that?
Yeah, basically.
I wonder what it's referencing there.
Well, I mean, and
I wonder if it's dropping hints towards anything.
Possibly.
Cough.
Yeah, but
Inquisitions.
Exactly. But Garth Ennis, if you've watched The Boys, he's very open about discussing political topics, but using it in a way that's not in your face. The Boys is very much about propaganda and real world stuff going on. To me, Crossed it's another way to have an apocalyptic situation, and a different take on a zombie outbreak. Like I said, not zombies, same idea of human race being infected and taken out in that way. But
so, we've kind of talked about every instance of zombies we've brought up so far has kind of been virus related. And because that's usually the cause of these zombie outbreaks and stuff like that. But the actual
in entertainment, yes.
Yeah, the actual term for zombie, and where kind of zombies came from is from like Haitian and African folklore and voodoo.
Yep, and that
voodooism.
Exactly. Yes. Yep,
is voodooism the correct word there?
The beginning. It's basically in that kind of.
Okay.
I
wasn't sure if ism was the right thing to add on the end of that, but
voodoo is is actually the religion itself, isn't it? Like it's the you'd think of it like voodoo being like spooky magic stuff, like.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is that it there's like good voodoo priests and priestesses that condemn things like that, like witchcraft and stuff like that, which is where like zombies come from. Like the term zombie is a voodoo priest, basically, like a dark voodoo priest that uses magic to raise a corpse from the dead and basically make them their slave. So most of the time in these voodoo practices or whatever, where you use magic to raise a body, the person that has been reanimated is mindless kind of and like a slave to the person that reanimated them.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought this up earlier because you were talking about how everything we've talked about so far has been a virus, reanimating a body and such like that. So it made me think about how there's a parasite that it burrows into like ants. I think it has the ability to get into like rabbit. No, well, it comes from rabbits, right? Or no?
Yeah, so you're thinking of two different parasites. There's a marine parasite, and then there is a land parasite. One comes from grasshoppers and will take over other bugs, like ants and things like that. And then the sea one will take over like snails and slugs and things like that.
Yeah.
And control.
Isn't there one? It's like the mind control bug or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a parasite.
It comes from like cats, right?
Yeah. Well, I think
There's
all
one
of it. I
from
think
that comes from like cat litter.
well,
Oh,
I think
yes,
that's
yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's into small, right? So like grasshoppers and stuff like that, and it gets eaten by slightly bigger mammals or rats, rabbits, cats, and stuff like that. And they reproduce in their bowels or in their stomach and stuff like that, and then they are pooped out essentially, and
I
that's how
And
they
they continue
reproduce.
their yeah.
Hmm.
And there actually
I
is
think that's
a
how like um I think that's why you see like I don't know if you guys have ever noticed it or not, but I could kind of bring it back to voodoo and stuff like that. It's kind of cats are always kind of related with that, and cats are always kind of thought about like this evil thing, like a
they are, but
Halloween kind of
that's really in a lot of
thing
culture
is like
though.
the
The
black
cat
cats
is yeah,
and all
you
that
know,
stuff, how it
yeah.
brings bad luck. That's kind of where that comes from, is
Yeah.
that cats are over, and there's actually I forgot what kind of animal it was, but there was an animal that drowned itself basically, and
Because it was
it's
controlled by something. And that's
yeah.
another thing. And if we get into film, there are a few films where zombies are it's another form of zombie, but they are controlled by a parasite. If you've ever seen the movie Slither, which came out in 2006, it had Nathan Fillion and Michael Rooker and a few other people, and I can't remember exactly the whole cast. But it was a film where alien leeches basically come to Earth in a meteorite, and they start to. I mean, they go through people's mouths and they control their mind and their brain, and they turn them basically into zombies. And then there's an '80s movie called Night of the Creeps, which is another very disturbing film that I've seen it. I've seen it once, and then I've watched clips and stuff on YouTube because I like to watch really nasty gore from the '80s. But it's the same concept, and in fact, to me, Slither's kind of a remake of Night of the Creeps, but it's these slug-like worms that basically burrow. They go in through your mouth and they burrow into your brain, and they control you. And that's also interesting because there are parasites we know, like you all have already brought up, that do control. Well, ain't it a grasshopper? Don't grasshoppers or crickets or something, like they get them in them and they'll yeah, they kill themselves.
Hmm.
And
They also do ants, right? Where they have them grow up they climb up a stalk of grass or something, and either they have them sit there until they're ate, or they make them put themselves into a harm's way to be eaten,
yep,
or they will sit
so
there,
that they
they'll
can
climb them up
spread.
there. Or they'll sit there and they'll climb up, and it's like a fungal,
Yep.
like a fungal virus, and then it'll sprout out of its head, and it
Well,
uses its body as sustenance.
we can get into fungal, again with the zombie
Okay,
apocalypse
so
situation and entertainment. You have The Last of Us, which is another zombie apocalypse setting, apocalyptic world where a fungus has taken over and it turns people into undead killing machines. So there a lot of there's been multiple different settings and scenarios that have made a zombie, and that's what I find fascinating about it. And it's the human mind makes all this up because, of course, it's for the most part fiction. These parasites that we're talking about are not, but I mean, when it comes to the human side of it, but to me, and we've seen videos. I've seen some videos that are terrifying, but it's people that are on drugs, um, or certain types mixtures of drugs that almost act like a zombie or act in a rage fueled and they contort their body in weird ways and they attack people. They eat people's faces off. We discussed before the guy that got caught on camera who was on bath salts, who literally attacks a man, eats his face completely off, and didn't it take multiple bullets to take the man down. Like, I mean, he would not go down because his body was so fueled by this drug that he couldn't be couldn't be stopped until they had to shoot him in the head. I think that's what finally took him out. But it just kind of makes you wonder, or not really wonder, but it makes you think, okay, what happens if you get 100 people in a setting to where they're all taking the same mixture of a drug, which, you have flakka, you have bath salts, which I know bath salts is just a term for a mixture of a bunch of different ingredients, correct? Ain't that what bath salts are? I mean, it's not actual bath salts. I think that it's a mixture of something.
No, it's literally bath salts. It's literally like it's a certain one, but there is a literal bath salt.
It's that ain't that similar that K2 K3
Yes.
crap that was like the potpourri that you smoked and got high.
You could buy that crap over the counter too.
I
It
think
had
you could
seizures
probably.
on.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
well, there's actually a story of a guy that I think he actually died from that stuff, and that's when it become like a very well-known thing.
yeah. But I mean,
I've seen a couple people have seizures on that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's
I've
what
heard
I'm
of some
saying.
people
Like,
doing it.
is it banned or is it? I mean, you all just said it's readily available. So what's
No, well, so-
stopping?
I think it was readily. I have not heard about that in forever, honestly, since I was in high school. So 7 years ago, they had it used to be, it was like K2, and then it was illegal. They made it illegal, so then they just changed the name on it, and they turned K3 or
It
whatever.
was
And
basically synthetic marijuana is what it was.
but it
basically.
wasn't labeled like it was sold as a potpourri,
Like an incense
like an
kind of
incense.
thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
and if you happen to smoke it, you would get high. But
They
was
sold it at the little sex shop or whatever there on 63
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
across from the
Across
racetrack.
from the racetracks, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what? Let's just get down to it because we've all been there and seen me. Four Locos. And I mean, I'm being dead serious right now. And we can laugh about it because we all have multiple times. But
I think that'd be a
If-
great story for CJ to tell.
we'll get there in a second. We'll get there in a second. But if we go to the scenario where we've seen that happen. If the right person in the right frame of mind gets a hold of something like that, and if I remember correctly, the version I drank was even the tamed down version from like the original Four Loko.
No, I think that was still when they were like shouldn't be
The
selling
four
it. I was
different
like
the four different ingredients, which was what,
Yeah.
caffeine, and I don't remember.
was like-
It was
liquid cocaine at that point.
yeah. I mean, it was and I had consumed 2 of them that night. That it all happened, but I mean, I literally lost my mind and was in almost a zombie-like state.
I think
And-
what, especially after just the first however long we've been running, 30 minutes now, that we've gathered, a lot about pop culture zombies.
Yep.
So you went into that more than likely having just seen some sort of zombie thing, watching, reading, something. So it manifests itself through the whatever ingredient is in that thing, which caused you to react in a specific way. Which
I'll tell you what was in it. Give me just a second.
And
'cause
for those of
I-
you who don't know or have never heard the story, we'll give you a little quick background. CJ, you want to give a little quick synopsis on what happened?
yeah, so go to this get together, and he's offered this Four Loco, and I tell him, that's probably not a good idea. I myself have had a bad experience with the Four Loco. Like, they weren't fun for me. So he goes ahead, right? Because I tell him no, but it's whatever. Well, and a little bit later, he said, "Hey, can I have a second one?" To which I'm like, "No," and in correct fashion, pours me. So he get one, and he's fine for a little while. So me and Christian, someone called and said something about I think his motorcycle was being stolen. Someone said,
Yeah, that's what it was.
So just to clarify this, we were at this get together. I was not drinking at this point. I don't think Christian was either. I don't think anyone was drinking other than Tyler and a few of the other people. So me and Christian run to town real quick because it's still pretty early in the night. Run to town real quick to check on his motorcycle. It was fine. I think he rode it wherever, and we go back. And as we're driving down the road, we notice some people are hidden off behind I think it was they had a bulldozer that they were hid behind. Well, comes stumbling down the road what appears to be a zombie or a infected individual, right? And I'm like, oh, look, there's Tyler. I was like, man, he's funny. That's hilarious. He's playing a game. He thinks he's trying to trick us and make us think he's a zombie. So then I pull up to him and he starts banging on my hood. And I'm like,
Hard.
oh, that's hilarious. I'm like, this is funny. So then he's hitting it even harder. And I'm like, okay, so the joke's not funny anymore. So I lean out and I'm like, hey, get over here. And so he walks around and he latches onto my arm. Like both hand grabs onto my wrist and my elbow and starts trying to bite. So I hold him off with one hand and he's like, right. And I hold him off and we get him calmed down. He hops in the truck and away we go. And then that was the same night of the Commons, wasn't it?
The Commons were coming, yeah. Apparently,
So
predicted the impending doom.
Yeah.
So that situation happened, and then it kind of escalated more until he started becoming an oracle. I guess I don't know. He was foreseeing stuff, and that
the
that
Oracle of Delphi. He's the Oracle of Alton.
What we're getting at though is that the mixture, and I've got it pulled up here. So Four Loko was a mixture of caffeine, taurine, and guarana.
Those
as well
are
as
ingredients found in energy drinks.
Yeah.
Like 95% of energy drinks have taurine and guarana in it.
Yep. So basically, it was an energy drink that also contained alcohol in it. So it really, it was an upper and a downer at the same time. And, from personal experience, it did really mess you up. And to me, if that got in the wrong hands or a weak-minded person, who at the time, apparently I was weak-minded, but it can really make you, because if I probably could have, I would have bit CJ hard. Like I would have, and not even really realize I was doing it.
It was the lack of neck strength that really saved me.
Yeah, and I do have vague memory of it happening. Obviously, but not much. And so I was in a state where I was acting zombie-like, and I attacked a friend for no reason. Literally no reason at all. So I can only imagine somebody being on a drug mixture, and they have been doing it all night long, and then all of a sudden they have gone batshit crazy because they're literally on a drug, and that has consumed their mind and their body. Their body is no longer their own. Their mind is no longer their own. All that they can think about is acting like a fool and attacking people.
Or
And
even maybe they're not even thinking like that. Maybe
Well,
go ahead.
maybe not.
even just thinking too much, right? So I won't name any names, but here years ago, there's we all four know somebody that would drink, and depending on where their head was at when they started drinking, that's where they went hard into where they ended up at a bad place. And we've seen like what we thought was actual possession. I thought at one point I witnessed someone's soul leave their body. Even it's.
Were you
So
awake
even
for the
alcohol-
exorcism, or were you asleep for that?
I wasn't there.
But alcohol again is a mind altering drug. So anything, and I really think that to anybody that is weak minded or weak spirited, if you believe in that sort of a thing, their body, whenever you use something like like any kind of drug that alters your consciousness, I think it can in some instances allow either. I mean, it depends on how you look at things. If you can say it's a demon, you can say it's another part of your mind, but it allows a part of your brain to do things that you normally wouldn't do. Which, I mean, we understand that's why it's mind altering. That's what
So
it's doing.
Let me play devil's advocate. I don't know if that's the right term I need to use. All right, so I've read before that if you are possessed, in order for sometimes the demon or whatever is possessing is not strong enough to manifest in a sober individual. Like the state isn't weak enough or whatever, so
because
they take advantage.
At the point you're sober, your mind is clearly, you have the barriers all up. You can't allow anything evil or
So whenever people drink or they get high or do drugs or do anything like that, they are in a weakened state, and that demon or whatever is possessing them is able to actually take control and manifest and push the person in certain directions.
And people that are on bath salts or flakka, and in a lot of the videos I've seen of people that are on flakka, they are doing things that are very more not necessarily zombie like, but more demonic possession like. And I'm talking about their bodies contorting, they're making very weird noises that it sounds like their soul's trying to leave their body. It's very, very disturbing. But it's also, if you get back into entertainment, you have films like World War Z. When somebody got bit with and was infected with that virus, they contorted and their body changed, popped, cracked, didn't do normal things. And and then if you get in even in Korean, because right now to me the Korean film industry is nailing zombies. Right now you've got on Netflix, you have Kingdom, which right now is to me one of the best shows they have on Netflix. And then they also just released a film called oh my gosh, what was it? #Survive or #.
Yeah, the one where he's stuck in his apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
fantastic
really good.
Film.
I've seen that.
I really enjoyed it. Thought it was great. But the Korean zombies are what we discussed as fast zombies, but they're also, in a weird way, they contort their bodies, and it's almost like a demonic possession at the same time as being a zombie. So it very much reminds me of somebody that is on what they call flakka, and I don't even know what flakka really is, to be honest with you. I've just always heard it called flakka. So I'm going to look up what flakka is.
So while we're kind of paused here, do we want to kind of bounce away from the drugs and like the pop culture ish?
I'm just starting to think that we partied with the wrong people growing up. Everybody else has stories of people having demonic fits.
I'm sure they do.
To know if Tristan, if you had any. I know you'd mentioned something about like Haitian zombies. I don't know if we wanted to go to origins
that was
of zombies.
Just kind of like the origin of the whole zombie thing to begin with was just that it was kind of more of a magical thing than like a scientific thing.
Which because I can bring it up because I know
that is kind of like scientific-y and. This does kind of go with the pop culture thing as well. But really when I think of the first like zombie, I think of Frankenstein.
Exactly. I was about to say the same thing. Yep.
So, I just think of Frankenstein being like the first, and he was created like scientifically in a lab kind of thing. But he was like an undead thing, basically. Put together different parts of different people, I guess.
I guess technically, I mean, how we always come back to this somehow or another, I think, is like the ancient Greeks.
Yeah.
So I've got this, and it's not a very long article. It's just it's a small thing stating that like ancient Greeks may have been like the first civilization terrorized by a fear of the undead. This is the archaeologists. They have unearthed many ancient graves contain skeletons pinned down by rocks and other heavy objects, assumingly to prevent the dead bodies from reanimating. Which actually, so if we want to go into Norse mythology too, because we seem to do that a lot.
Wonder why.
There's these things called There's these things called Draugr,
Yeah.
which are
Yep.
zombies, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're literally just I don't know if there's anything specific. They're just reanimated.
Undead, basically.
Yeah, Norsemen, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know if they. I think they're specifically warriors. Maybe don't quote me on that. But I know they have like superhuman strength. They can. The one main difference with them is they can increase their size. They can increase and decrease their size. Like they can grow and shrink.
Yeah.
I guess they are incredibly stinky.
Well, I would think a corpse would stink.
Mhm.
I
Which feeds into like your typical zombie.
Mm-hmm. You know, and we brought Frankenstein into this, if I remember correctly. But I think I remember hearing a story about reality where they did resurrect a human body, or they made the body work again. And I can't remember. I don't think that they actually brought him back to life, but they made his motor functions work. Like I think they made his body blink. And I think they may have used like electromagnetic pulses or electronic pulses to make the body work again. But
I mean, scientifically though, that is doable. So I mean,
it is doable.
It is doable to not necessarily reanimate something, but with electric pulses, make something work.
Well, let me ask you a question. So we have been, in my understanding, because I've read about it a little bit in the last few years, but we're very close to the first human brain transplant.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's you've even had people that have volunteered that, hey, when I die, or like, let's try this out. But think about that for a second. So you bring back a human body with a different brain in it.
Mhm.
How does that body react to having somebody else's brain? Because you'd have
to test, right? So it'd be no different than an organ. Like it couldn't, right? Because your body will, if it does not match. Like, so you can't just take some dude's heart. If you have heart problems and I'm dead, they can't just take my heart and say, we're going to shove it in you. They have to actually do testing. It has to be a
That's
match.
what she said.
Well, but there has to be
and
a match.
maybe
It has
so,
to correlate.
Where I'm going with this though is like if we ever do get to that point to where we can transplant human brain into another person. So, I die, but my brain can save somebody that has brain cancer, and they go ahead and they do the surgery, and it's a success. Does the person now become me?
I guess that depends on your understanding of a conscience and self-awareness and a soul.
I think genuinely, right? So we're basically just a ball of meat pilot in a meat suit, right?
Right, with a computer chip.
So
And
our
the brain is the
everything
operation.
everything we are is the brain. So if you took the brain and you put it somewhere else, you're basically just upgraded your ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we'll probably get to this at some point later in our podcasting career, but we start talking about, we've mentioned uplifting in the past, or even like how we uplift ourselves right now with technological enhancements. Eventually I think that's really going to be,
are we talking about like cybernetics?
yeah, where we lead with that. I know that kind of gets away from zombies, and before long I want to get into another section of zombies.
It doesn't, because where I was going with the brain transplant thing is, what happens if that goes awry and a brain transplant actually turns the host and the person that has accepted the brain into something that's not human anymore, because the brain that's in the body does not know how to function inside said body, because that's not where it belongs. So
I think I think it would be lines of like, if you took somebody and you moved their brain willingly, they knew what they were willingly being volunteered to have their brain put in something else. I don't think there would be as big of a problem. Whereas like with Frankenstein, it wasn't just one brain body, right? He was
body.
The body. Yes, I mean he had, his hand come from a supermodel, the other hand come from, so it was literally piece by piece put together.
Uh-huh.
And the body, the brain, everything had been dead for a long time. So when he awoke, he was shocked. And I think it would be more, because he wouldn't have had a soul, right? Ain't that the premise of that too? He didn't have a soul.
I think it's he did, but they thought he didn't.
I'm not a Frankenstein expert. I just know what Van Helsing taught me.
I just know it's definitely a
Frankenstein.
Right, so it was such a shock. He was jolted from beyond wherever. I mean, whatever. If it was just black, and then all of a sudden it was here, or he was in heaven, hell, wherever, and
he's still a monster. Mm-hmm. He didn't know how to function.
How dare you?
I know. Okay. Poor Frankenstein. But what I'm getting at, like, he wasn't a zombie. He wasn't out. Well, it depends on the depictions, because I have seen depictions of Frankenstein where he is an actual monster, and he is out and he kills. It kills. It kills. And it's still an undead being. That has been resurrected from the dead. And I mean, that's, we kind of get to the part, like, what do we define, where do we stop the definition of an actual zombie? Like, what is where does the definition stop? And that's what I was getting at with the brain surgery. And it's a very good point with you talking about cybernetics, because what happens when we get to the point where we have cybernetics in our bodies, and then somebody finds a way to hack the cybernetics in our bodies, and then they can control our minds and our bodies to do whatever the hell they want us to do.
You've created a technological zombie?
You have. I mean, literally, you could take, if they hacked everybody that had this one cybernetic implant, and then all of a sudden our brains are no longer controlled by us, they're controlled by a hacker, and then we are a horde of cybernetic zombies. And if you want to get even further into that, if we're going to talk cybernetics, we can talk about enhanced strength, enhanced speed, enhanced everything. Whatever they want to enhance, I'm sure that they'll find a way to cybernetically enhance it down the road. So at that point, you have an army of basically mindless zombies.
Speaking of the hacking and the like Neuralink and stuff like that, we all know Elon Musk probably listens to this podcast.
Oh, probably.
So I want to speak directly to him. I want to speak directly to him right now. A failsafe. If something like this ever happens, where we put electronics and our phones are basically inputted into our brain, you will have a failsafe to cut the connection, right? And you would be able to maintain your bodily functions, everything. You would just be like pulling the plug on the router.
Yeah, like a dip switch.
Explain to me, how are we going to know to pull the plug if we're already being controlled?
It would be an automated thing, right? So like you have you would have like in a breaker box. Mm-hmm. If something starts popping and there's too much electricity coming through and that breaker's being overloaded, you don't have to run in there and turn it off. It flips itself off. If a certain sequence of things happen that you don't give approval to, like, so say something wants to do, like, you have to give approval, I don't guess you have to, but like whenever you screen mirror, right, or someone takes control of your screen to do something for you, you give approval to it, and if they start doing stuff you don't like, you bounce out.
Yeah.
Right.
And and it's just, we've kind of gotten off on things that more than likely will never happen. But to me, the most likely scenario of a zombie outbreak ever happening is a disease of some sort.
So let me take the wheel for a second. I'm going to spin us in another direction.
Spin us, buddy.
So I like to bring things back into how can this relate to what's happening in my life or where I'm at, right? That's my big deal. So I'm thinking about weaponizing this. Okay, I'm thinking about, say we take Flocka or we take something like that, something that induces a rage state. Okay.
Yep.
And then it's weaponized, and then is dispensed over major cities or in public places.
Condensed down and aerosoled.
Yep.
That's a premise of something, isn't it?
Your life, I think.
Yeah, my life is a mess.
I'm
But
that's where I see real, actual life zombie. And maybe it's not something that spreads by infection or spreads by bite or spreads by some pop culture reference, but it's something that has. I mean, I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. Half the world's got a virus that the Chinese government manufactured right now.
You damn right we do. And,
I mean,
I've lived through it, and I know it's real. So it's one of those things that if they can spread something like this and it spreads easily and fast, then
so what if this is stage 1? This is test zone. Can we spread this SARS-like virus across the world? Okay, cool. We got that done.
Yep.
So now, how do
Here
we
comes the
take
rage
that?
virus.
So let's just you guys want to discuss this a little bit, because
Condensing down rabies is what they're doing, Woody, and they're gonna
rabies is
Hey, I mean, think about it. Rabies is very much a zombie-like disease.
Yes. I mean, even chronic wasting disease. So our deer
Yes.
population getting chronic wasting disease.
Yep.
I mean, if you see a deer that's had chronic wasting disease for quite a while, they look.
Don't they walk around in like circles and stuff?
Oh yeah, and I mean, they're like their skin will fall off. They'll just like
turn blue and
Yeah.
and, yeah.
I mean,
nasty.
like zombie. Yeah.
Really, that's kind of like what it is. If you get, I mean, it's really disturbing, actually. And I don't know, but when you another thing when you think zombies, and I don't know how actually accurate this is in actual history, but Nazis, supposedly were doing experiments that were experimenting on human beings and turning them into a zombie-like being, and you have Call of Duty with Nazi zombies, but there was a movie that came out a couple years ago, Overlord, yeah, and that film I've only seen it one time, but it was very well done, and it's very disturbing as well, but it just makes you think what's to say that there aren't experiments out there where they're taking people and experimenting on making them into a weapon, and a weapon that can keep going and going and going. Bullets don't stop it. Not necessarily they're not necessarily going to kill you by biting you, but I mean, or spread their virus by biting. But they're a weapon. They're going to attack. They're going to claw. They're going to bite. They're going to kill.
Have we discussed 28 Days Later at all?
We brought it up
bit.
earlier a little
Well,
bit.
that's what I was thinking of when you said that they weaponized the virus to they spread it everywhere.
It's
right.
a rage virus is what it is, and that yes,
Like rabies. It's essentially rabies.
it is. It's exactly, and in fact, I think it is an offshoot of rabies in that film. Like if I remember,
It's a deadly modified rage virus that was released by an eco-terrorist in Cambridge, destroying the UK.
And that's what, like, I mean, it really, that's what I've always said when I think zombie apocalypse. It's not going to be dead people. It's going to be human beings that are out of their minds and they are on a killing spree. And like I was saying earlier, I never really got to, but think about if you have 100 people all doing the same drug at the same time in the same room. And think about how that would affect. It may affect one person completely different than the other, but they all absolutely go insane. And then they all decide, hey, we're going to all leave this place, go running down the streets, breaking into people's homes, attacking and killing, ripping off their face with our teeth because they're out of their mind. I don't know if you all remember, I don't know if I sent you the video or not, but it was a video from this lady. She was inside her home, and there was a woman who was on Flakka or bath salts or something outside of her window and just kept hitting the window and contorting and making weird gurgling.
Yeah, you sent that
nasty.
to me. I remember that.
And I mean, that to me, that would be just like having a zombie outside my window.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just tell you what, if I had that situation, I would defend myself. You know what I mean? It's getting to that point that if people continue to do this kind of stuff, it could potentially turn into something that is
yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's really one of the biggest risks that we have today, outside of our infrastructure just being junk as it is probably somebody weaponizing some kind of virus and dispensing it against us in such a manner.
Yep, and I mean that may be where we're headed.
So I do kind of want to. I know we talked about at the very beginning of this whole thing. We were going to discuss the coronavirus a little, and just how you were mentioning earlier, like how it's manufactured and it's been spread everywhere, and we keep discussing how possible weaponization and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to. I don't know how to get into this.
We'll get into it.
So, the conspiracy theorist in me says, right, there were massive riots and
in Hong Kong.
Yes, and stuff like that was happening, right? They were advocating for democracy and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of all of this, the coronavirus happened to them, right?
Right.
I'm thinking that it was for sure. It was obvious. It was definitely manufactured. It was used for a weapon, but they screwed up, and they meant to keep it in their borders.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are, 2 weeks later.
Are you saying that it was a population control sort of situation?
No, more
to shut
of
down the protests.
Yes, to stop. They were getting too close to finally taking over. Getting what there was too much coverage of this, right? Everyone knew what was happening in Hong Kong and in China. So everyone knew that they were fighting for democracy and they were fighting for their freedom. And so, how do we shut them down? We completely we completely lock down our country, right? We have a virus that's killing people. We shut down our country. You're not allowed to go outside. Guess what? That stops the riots. But there's Americans in China, and they go home, and they were contaminated. They had contact with people who were infected and so on and so forth, and here we are, right?
Yeah.
I think there was a reason behind it. I don't think it was to destroy the world. I think it was to maintain control, and they messed up.
Mm-hmm. But it just goes to show that if COVID is a man-made virus, which everybody thinks more than likely that it is, it just
there's evidence now that it is
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it just goes to show how, and like I mentioned earlier, how fast it can spread. I personally know that 9 out of the 12 people I work with were exposed within a 2-week time period, and 9 of us tested positive with COVID-19, and we lost one because of COVID-19. And it's really hit home with me because it is, to me, not being taken as serious as it should be by a lot of people, and it just makes you realize that if something like COVID can spread as fast as it is, then what's to stop something like a rage virus, from spreading extremely quickly?
Right.
So, but anyway, I mean, we could talk all night about a virus spreading and going on and on and on about it, but it's just the fact that do I think that we'll ever see an actual zombie apocalypse? More than likely not. More than likely, the human race is going to wipe themselves out with nukes if we ever destroy ourselves.
We have a 1% chance of getting hit by an asteroid the day before the elections. So
cool.
Hey, that's a pretty high chance. But I mean, that asteroid could have a slug on it that burrows into our brains and turns us into mindless zombies.
So, one of the memes, or like a funny thing I've seen, is you have, and I'm not saying that the coronavirus is fake and not deadly and no, so on and so forth, but they say that you're just as likely to die from the coronavirus as we all are to die from this asteroid hitting us and killing us the day before the election.
That's true.
Yeah, but I mean, in our area alone, we're hearing more and more deaths daily from COVID. And
been around just 2 people. Like I was around freaking patient 0 for our county, and then not so recently, but a few weeks ago was around another guy that then tested positive.
Yeah. So
I'm just built different.
It just biological warfare is a thing. And it's scary because we don't know what they can do to us. We really do not know what biological warfare could turn into. But
yeah, I mean, and that's, if you wanted to massively interrupt a country's economy or their ability to defend themselves, I mean, what better way than to turn their own people against them? I mean, it just seems like if I'm a world superpower and I'm planning on invading a country, it seems like a great pre-invasion attack.
To wipe them out.
Yeah,
so that's
this
the thing.
or an EMP style attack would hands down be the best way to do that stuff.
So everyone keeps talking. You're hearing all the time about a Civil War #2 type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
Not happening. We start the Civil War #2. We make it a week into it, and China or Russia, they come in and welcome to communists.
That leads to World War III, in my opinion. If that happens, I mean
Wolverines.
Exactly. Yeah. I get to be Charlie Sheen.
As long as I'm Patrick Swayze.
You dang right. With that hairdo, of course.
Thanks.
But but I mean, anyway, we're kind of veering off topic here, but it's
part of
it's just a scary world we live in right now. The unknown whenever it comes to something like this, it's scary for sure.
Unknown undead.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, gentlemen, does anybody have any final comments for this week's episode they'd like to get out there?
I just think that one day, if it does ever happen, humanity will have to band together and fight off the hordes.
Let me just tell you.
Give me double pistols and a shotgun, and I will completely annihilate zombies. Left 4 Dead taught me that.
We're not agreeing on anything. We're not banding together. They're gonna blow sirens, and you're gonna shoot your neighbor because or you're gonna get shot by. That's how it happens.
So humanity works.
We do not band together in times of need.
No.
We take advantage of. We steal, we loot, we kill. That's how it goes.
See,
We don't.
I disagree with you because I mean there are good people that, in my opinion, would like. I know that the four of us, if a zombie apocalypse situation happened, we would all be right there together as quick as we possibly could to
Yep.
defend each
That
other.
way I
and
can
defend
shoot
our
you in the
families.
leg.
But here's the thing: we might all do, but we don't know what every other Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to be doing, right?
They'll
At first,
be
the
banding
Toms.
together with their homies.
yeah. Well, at first, we might all try to get. Okay, let's take anybody in. Let's all get in.
I ain't
then
taking
eventually-
anybody
with
in.
anybody.
Well, I'm
I'm
just
robbing
stating.
you.
I'm stating.
blind.
See, we are just inherently bad. Apparently, they're like, everything goes fan, and we're like, all right, how can we, right?
If I don't like you, I'm taking all of your chicken flavored ramen noodles.
Dude, I have
Even-
like a whole box
even
of
if-
that stuff. You are not taking it.
Even if we like you a little bit less than someone else, you're probably gonna lose your ramen noodles.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, I'm out for this week.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, episode
Well,
10 down, boys.
Thank you for discussing this with us.
Thanks, everybody.
And we'll see y'all next week.